We're going to dismiss children. We've got to do a little bit of a stage reset here, or platform reset, because we're going to bring a panel of church leaders up. And we're going to discuss parenting in these last days. Thank you, men. I'm going to steal Cale's little stool over here. We have to do this kind of discussion from time to time because kids grow up, new parents have new babies, and I'll sit down here, I think. And we have to keep adapting the gospel. I shouldn't say the gospel, adapting our parenting. Let me say this before I invite our illustrative panel up. We are living at the end of time, and culture is evolving exponentially. You jump back in time 500 years, things didn't change for 100 years at a time. You grew up in the same holler that your grandfather died in, and you plowed the same field, and you married somebody next holler over. And as we've marched on through time, I'm not a sociologist, and I'm sure someone's worked out the equation, probably much like the whatever the rule is for computation and computers and memory doubling. I would say that we're probably changing culture now, not every 50 years, not every 20 years. I think our culture is evolving every couple weeks. The fact that now furries and transgenders are a regular talk in our culture, that didn't exist 3 years ago. Now it did, but it was in the seedy underbelly of dark, bad parts of major cities. It wasn't in Sparta. It wasn't in Livingston. It wasn't in Cookeville. So the internet has made things all interconnected. Social media expedited it. Then smartphones put it in the hands of 12-year-olds in Red Boiling Springs. So now the 12-year-old who has daddy issues but has a smartphone can be exposed to the same perversion of San Francisco through the power of a smart device and a familiar spirit. And now we have we have tobacco farmers who are identifying as the wrong gender. Like, come again? Tobacco farmers, and I'm playing stereotypes here, so just bear with me. Tobacco farmers living in a mobile home sharecropping tobacco, they're identifying as a furry. You didn't learn that in tobacco country. So my point is culture is evolving rapidly. If you even think about social media, see, social media took off about just shy of 20 years ago with Facebook and MySpace. Some of you are too young to even remember MySpace. I had a MySpace account for about a week. I'd tease Alan, big guy, talked me into it, and he befriended me, and I rejected him. Just because I thought, this is what we're going to do for the next 20 years. I could see it. And so I never accepted Alan's friend request. And then shortly thereafter, MySpace went bankrupt, probably because of me. So then you had YouTube, of course. I was on YouTube beginning in 2005 and 2006. That took off. Never knew that would be a social media platform. Then you have Vimeo, and you have Instagram, you have Tinder, and you have Grindr, and you have TikTok, and you have Threads, and you have Reddit, and you had Snapchat where people could send pictures and then messages and they disappear. All this is evolving. When I took over our church 16 years ago, sexting on flip phones was the problem with our youth. I was like, what? We're doing that? Our teenagers in this church are doing that? And then it got worse, and then social media, and then smart devices. And so there's always a problem to be dealt with in every generation. And we have to stay on top of it. So that's why we constantly do this. My wife reminded me that Pastor Kerry, who's a good friend of ours and a tremendous Bible teacher, his church has an annual parenting conference, which would be, it's a good idea to have, to constantly discuss parenting because the culture's evolving. When the gays do, not every gay, I don't lump them all together, and they don't want to be lumped together, but when the gays marched through the streets at the end of Pride Month and said, we're coming for your kids, and they chanted it on purpose, there's an agenda. Now, most gays don't want your kids. They don't even want their own kids. But there is that undercurrent of vitriol and perversion, and we know everything's propaganda. So my point is, things are evolving rapidly. It was about 2 or 3 years ago, we had the panel of educators up when we're discussing public school and those issues. And even public school has rapidly evolved in the last 30 years so that it's no longer what it once was. I was public school raised. I turned out fine. It's not what it was. It's a minefield. And that panel, whenever it was 3 years ago, every one of our educators, even those with grandkids now, said, if I had to do it today, I wouldn't put my kids in public education. But pulling them out isn't the only answer either, and that's some of the stuff we want to discuss. So I want to invite our panel up, which is the Eldridges, Dr. Crystal, and the Ablakwa. So why don't we have them come up? Luke, I'll let you man the mic. We should applaud, yes. That's Michael applauding for his wife. Do your thing. I'm going to go ahead and blame the success or failure of this all on Dr. Crystal. Tonight was totally her idea, but they are parenting a young boy. How old is Dammy? 6? 6, all right. So Dr. Crystal and Mr. Michael, of course, they have a vested interest. Everybody up here, all of us have children. How old is Jude? 8. All right, so I have the oldest kid up here. My Lydia is 11, and then my Abigail's 9, and then Jude is 8, and then who's after that? Then Dammy, which is 6, and then baby C, who is 4, and then Justice is 5, then baby C, who's 4, and then JoJo, 5. Okay. So we all have young kids up here. So we're the ones we're actually preaching at right now. We're helping ourselves. But also coincidentally, we are all leaders in this church who are in leadership positions, with the exception of Dr. Crystal. Dr. Crystal's a university professor, so she sees the 18 and 19-year-olds and sees what our culture is cranking out at the collegiate level, which she'll tell you is, whoa, Nelly, you made it to college? How did you make it this far? But the rest of us are both educators in this church and leaders, and so we see things from a spiritual perspective. So we have some questions. I want to throw a few scriptures up. I have them in the Amplified, so I want to throw those up there. Just pick one of them. Deuteronomy 6 first. Let's cover parenting just real basically. We're going to read to the Amplified. These words which I'm commanding you today shall be written on your heart and your mind. That's key number 1 to parenting. If you're going to parent as a Christian, the Word of God has to be richly in you. You shall teach them diligently to your children. That's a command. This is the D6 commission. The Baptists have a great parenting ministry covering this, and I absolutely love it. The D6 commission. You are to teach the precepts of your God to your children. Amplified brings out, and pressing God's precepts on their minds and penetrating their hearts with his truth. And you shall speak of these precepts when you sit in your house and when you walk on the road and when you lie down and when you get up. That right there says if you're going to be a godly parent and keep your kids on the path to heaven, you're going to talk to your kids every day about the things of God. We've said it for years. Parenting is exhausting. If you don't want to be inconvenienced, don't propagate. If you're going to propagate, you're responsible now. Having kids is a full-time job. If you're a lazy human being, you probably shouldn't have gotten married in the first place. But if you're lazy, you definitely shouldn't reproduce. Because if you typically it's the man who's lazy. Let's just be honest. We can handle it. We're the men. Yeah, we know how lazy we can be. We're supposed to be the stronger vessel, but we end up being the lazier human being. So a lazy man ends up delegating all child rearing and discipleship to his wife. And she's already doing 100 things from 5 a.m. till midnight anyway, and she's supposed to disciple. So a lot of our issues is the proverbial daddy issue. And I would tell you, every one of us have daddy issues. I want to make sure my kids don't. I want to make sure if there's issues, ain't daddy's fault. I would tell you, all of us have daddy issues for one reason or another. Some are more severe than others. If you were raised without a dad, daddy issue. If you're raised with an abusive dad, daddy issue. You're raised by a neglectful dad, daddy issue. The way to avoid daddy issues is when it's dad that's obeying this. I won't ask for a show of hands, but how many of you have had a Bible study with your kids this week? How many of you sat and talked with your kids about the things of God? Talked scripture? Quiet, maybe because you're like, but you violated this verse right here. Now, the heart of this verse is you're talking constantly about God. The literal legalistic letter is you're doing it 4 times a day. How many of you believe the Jews probably were doing it 4 times a day? Which is why the Jews are the oldest civilization on earth. And they can trace their lineage. Every other civilization from the time of their inception has been wiped out and buried in the sands of antiquity. But the Jews, because of D6, they still know their Judaism. They still know their faith. They still know their prophets. They still know their law. Pretty powerful point. What's the next one? Ephesians chapter 6. Let's look at this in the Amplified as well. Fathers, do not provoke. See the responsibility. Paul, the Pharisee of the Pharisees, circumcised the 8th day according to the tribe of Benjamin. He was a Hebrew of the Hebrews. He, building on Deuteronomy 6, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. Do not exasperate them to the point of resentment with demands that are trivial or unreasonable or humiliating or abusive. Sounds like Southern parenting. Probably not just the South, though. Good drunk daddy do the same thing. Nor by showing favoritism, which means you favor one kid and the other kids can tell. That's wicked. Or indifference. That means just totally neglecting them. It's not right. Now, Luke and Melissa have been our youth leaders for 11 years. Just as long as the Scudders have been missionaries, they've been youth leaders. And they are often looked down upon like they don't have any experience or they don't know what they're talking about. I think a lot of you are intimidated by them because they know your family dirt. Nervous chuckle, nervous chuckle, nervous chuckle. Because they're with your kids, and your kids are the real them when they're not around you. So they know stuff, and I think that's why they're often, because they tell me, Pastor, I can't approach them. Pastor, this person in the church won't talk to me. We can't be friends anymore because they're fearful and insecure, and they know that you know about them. So I want you to know they've been in ministry for 11 years dealing with our children. Plus, he's a psychologist, has worked with homeless people for a long time in his career. He's your vice mayor now, and pretty good. And the best part is he married Melissa. Yeah, we can applaud that. Told you doing good. Luke married up. Melissa, she had sinned against God a few times, and so. But Melissa is an educator, has her master's degree in education, so she's no slouch either, and understands the day that we're living in. Don't show favoritism or indifference to any of them, but bring them up tenderly, with loving kindness in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Now, some of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight, you'll have to constantly revisit. The key to parenting is being there. Now, probably the greatest curse to all of your families is your smartphone. It's a wonderful tool if it's a tool. But probably the greatest destructive force in your home is technology because, and I'm guilty of it, our kids have iPads for school because we homeschool, and about a month ago, we came home, I'm reading the news, Lydia's watching something on her iPad, Absy's watching something on her iPad, and Bud's watching Bluey on the TV, and there's all of us on a different device. And in my moment, I said, we're a useless bunch of people. I'm what we preach against. Look at this. And Amanda comes in and says, what is wrong with you? What is wrong? And now we're all watching something clean, and it's a Saturday, it's a down day, and we're pretty strict with our devices and what they can watch and when they can watch it. But if you're a parent and you're at the home, but you're always on your device, you're sinning against D6 and you're sinning against Ephesians 6 because you have to be present. It's like a competition. You must be present to win. There are purchases necessary, and you must be present to win. Dr. Crystal is a professor, so she sees college kids. These are ones that are supposed to be smart enough to make a university. And she's told me stories about their inability to be called upon in public or to answer. Just full of timidity and triggered. I said this morning, when you were raised in the 80s, nothing triggered you. I mean, people tried to find your triggers, and you didn't have any because it was a different generation. Things have evolved. And then, of course, Dr. Cephas and Miss Chantel, they're our college and career leaders, and both work at the university. Dr. Cephas used to be a high school teacher. They've worked with college and career for 12, 13, 14 years. So they see the high school kids come up, and they and the elders have talked back and forth for years. Here's who you're about to get. How can we adjust this? What do you need when our kids move up to college and career? What do you need better out of them so we can adjust it in our Sunday schools and in our Wednesday night services? So all of this gets talked about regularly. Yes, your kids get talked about regularly because we want to see them cross the finish line. We're playing for eternity here. Pastor Darren used to always drill in us, eternity, he'd say, is longer. Eternity is longer. So don't be offended if we say something that just nails you to the wall in front of your kids. Mr. Luke said, Pastor, but should we maybe send the youth out so we can discuss things openly? And I said, no, the youth have a right to know what biblical parenting looks like. The youth are adults. They have a right to know what biblical parenting and failed parenting looks like. We'll have to teach them how to forgive their parents, but also kids have a right to ask their parents for something better. If our kids can say, I'm hungry, can you feed me? I'm dirty, can you bathe me? Mommy, I need new shoes. Mommy, my pants are too short now, can we get longer ones? If they can ask for that, they can ask for better parenting, don't you think? Out of the mouth of babes. All right, so one final verse. I think all parenting is fixed by this one verse. No matter what generation, all parenting is fixed by this one verse. Pull up Malachi 4:6, New Living Translation. John the Baptist, Elijah, the spirit of Elijah, his preaching, this is the last verse of the entire Old Testament before the canon of the Bible shut and the Spirit of God quit speaking until Christ. Elijah, the coming of Elijah, his preaching will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children. Mothers have not been addressed in any of these verses. It's always the father's responsibility. Always, always, always. This is why we're so adamant about young ladies finding leaders to marry. You don't marry the first schmo that shows you attention. You marry the man that serves God with or without you, because you don't want to have to raise your kids with a parasite. Turning the heart of the fathers to their children, that's where parenting fails. You have kids, but your heart is not towards them. Paying for them to eat is not this verse. Letting them live under your roof is not this verse. When your heart is turned towards your kid, you're always thinking about what they're thinking about. You're thinking about what you can teach them next about your God. You're thinking about what needs to be balanced in their personality. What's the next thing they're going to develop? Where you're going to have to help them here. You're thinking about where they're different from this other child and how you got to adjust your parenting. When your heart is towards your children, you're constantly crying out to God for wisdom. If you're a diligent parent, you know how this works. Oh God, give me wisdom for my first child, because you know they're so different than my third child. Lord, give me wisdom. This fourth child just showed up, and I don't know what we're doing. Lord, and that second child, they're just so quiet, I don't even know if they can talk. Kids cause you to cry out to God for more. And if you're not crying out to God for wisdom for your kids, you are violating this verse, because your heart has not been turned towards your kids yet. Preaching of the word is supposed to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and then the children's hearts will turn towards their fathers. One of the things we fail at in our culture is we demand our kids to respect us, but we don't respect them. I am so tired of your attitude. Well, they learned it from you. The father's heart has to turn first, and when the father's heart turns, the kid's heart will fall. Otherwise, I will come and strike the land with a curse. Fatherlessness, even if it's a warm body present in the house, brings a curse on the land. All you have to do is look at cultures defined by fatherlessness, and they are cursed. Fatherlessness curses a land. It curses a church. It curses a culture. Curses a city. Curses a state. Curses a nation. We fulfill this. America defines this. Latin America doesn't have a problem with this. Africa doesn't have a problem with this. Good old US of A, we got problems with this. One of my friends in college was a homosexual. Couldn't figure out why he was so gay. And then I met his family, and his dad was present, but always sitting in a rocking chair. Mama was a stronger than life, bigger than life personality, and Daddy was just some passive chair sitter watching sports. This is in the 90s. I'm sure if he had social media, he'd have been on it. I'm going to give you children permission to say, Daddy, can you put down that phone and talk to me? Can you put down that phone and can we talk? You have to have a heart turned towards your children. All right. If not, I'll do all the preaching tonight. So let's ask some questions. Let's leave that verse up the whole time. Please, you go back. That's all right, Ben. That's our theme verse for tonight. Turning the hearts of the fathers towards the children. This verse is powerful because it doesn't matter if this is 200 years ago, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, during the MTV revolution. I remember MTV came out and everybody freaked out. We're going to lose our generation. And MTV said, we're coming for your kids. But if parents focused on their kids, yeah, you could weather the storm. Same with anything else going on today. If the Father is present, if the Father is interested, if the Father is excited, your kids will be fine. So let's ask a few questions. All right, we got to make sure we got a good mic mix on this. If the sound's horrible, we blame Luke because he's also the sound guy. So we have a list of questions here. We sat and met, I think Wednesday night, we discussed some of this to kind of get our input. And we'll ask this, since we're all younger parents here, and maybe we go one by one. How has working with our children, our young people in this church, how has it shaped your own parenting? So this is not going to call anybody by name, but you know that when we see people failing, we're making adjustments in our own private lives. Parenting's a marathon. You can't make up for bad parenting with 1 week vacation. So, Mr. Luke, you and Miss Melissa, since you're closest, you go first. How has working with our youth, since you work with our youth, how has it shaped your own parenting?
Is that good? Ooh, yeah. So one thing for me for sure is making sure I am involved, not just on my phone, not just doing another thing because of where I'm at right now, but being active in my kids' life. And, you know, growing up, I didn't have that as much, so that helped. But also seeing where we're at now with our youth, realizing what they're longing for is just a relationship with Dad, because they're with Mom a lot. But the dad thing, that's for me, right? So being involved with them, making sure I'm doing stuff with Jude and Jovi, not just taking them somewhere, sitting down, and start to flip, or whatever it is, but being involved and doing it with them. So that's for me.
I would like to say, first of all, we consider it a true honor to be youth leaders in this church. So thank you, Pastor, for having us do that. We have an amazing youth group, so I just had to give a shout out to our amazing youth group. I love them. We often talk about like who will take over our place, and I get mad. I'm like, I don't want to discuss that. They're mine, so someone can fight me for them later. But one thing that I've learned along the way is just to make sure that I am more encouraging with my kids and not just corrective.
Yeah.
I try to make sure that I consciously am aware of when I correct, especially Jude right now, and I try to make sure that I'm consciously aware when I'm encouraging him. So that way he's not just receiving constant correction, because it's easy to correct because you see it and you notice it and it flips a switch in you. But sometimes it's you notice good things and you smile to yourself, but you don't let them know that you've noticed it. And I think it's important, and I've learned that along the way, that yes, it's our job to correct and point out things that they're messing up, but it's so important that we remember to encourage along the way as well.
Dr. Crystal?
Well, shout out to my spanking coach. That's what I call Miss Melissa, because I go and talk to her and ask her, would you have spanked him then? What do you think about this? And literally, she is my spanking coach. So part of, and I get to work in Champions too, but asking questions of other parents to say, okay, I really see how you did this, or how would you avoid this, or just try to take what I've seen and how I can imagine doing it differently, asking other parents. And then secondly, I would add trying to really strategize for how we maximize our time with Dammy, to say, okay, I'll give this example, that in the mornings during the work week, my husband will go out Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday and exercise, and then on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I do that. And then when we alternate that, that's the other one is doing Bible study. And we had to schedule that so we can make sure that is happening and then we do other scheduled times, and it feels like you're putting it on a calendar, but it makes sure it gets done, kind of like, date night or whatever else it is, that's a pillar in your schedule. So that helps facilitate conversation for the rest of the day. So looking to think, how can we get more word in him, and really just planning for that. And that's been a blessing.
Ms. Chantel, how has working with our college and career changed how you guys or affected how you're parenting your two?
So I think for me the biggest thing, I think making sure that my kids catch the heart of God.
Yeah. Because
one thing that, and it's not just exclusive to our church, but I was also a part of, other ministries before, and one thing that I noticed, and I was very grateful to, we have a small church, we get to be around Pastor Miss Manda. Before we had kids, I could be around Miss Manda more, but sometimes I feel like there is something that, a revelation of the love of God that maybe the pastor has and the pastor's family has, that maybe not everybody in the congregation has. And I say that because the way they deal with their kids, it's not like you're preaching from the pulpit.
Right.
So they see your kids are going to mess up, and I think sometimes, and hopefully this is making sense, but sometimes when you're outside of that, if you're not close or able to see Pastor and Miss Manda and how they are with their kids, you think that you have to react to your kids how Pastor preaches from the pulpit.
To adults.
Yes. And that's something that I saw at the previous ministry that I was a part of as well. And so that was one of the things that it, number one, puts a holy fear in me, because I'm like, good parents raise kids that don't serve God. Jesus, help us.
Yeah.
Help us teach them. But that is one of the things, is really catching the heart of God to put that in my kids, and not just, well, Pastor said this, and, kind of doing that. So I hope that makes sense.
I preached on holiness this morning and being clean, and then I went home, and as Amanda was fixing lunch, I'm in my underwear and a t-shirt sitting at a IKEA toddler table building a Lego Halo set for Justice. So those are two different extremes. Underwear and t-shirt, sitting at IKEA chair as small as that stoop, putting together this Halo thing, going, why am I doing this? I'm so hungry, I'm tired, because Justice needs it. And plus, I don't quit, and I can beat this thing. It's made for kids. And then Mommy says, lunch is ready. I said, praise the Lord, I'm delivered. So you get up. But yeah, I think if you try to parent your children like I pastor adults, you'll ruin your kids. Because I don't talk to my kids like I talk to adults, because they're not adults. And I don't pastor my kids. I parent them. And there's a big difference. And you do have to catch the heart, and it's a wonderful point that understand when the pastor is being the pastor, and when the pastor is being a friend, and when the pastor is being a geologist, and when the pastor is being a parent, and when he's being a husband and a boyfriend to his wife, be able to make those distinctions and not just say, well, Pastor wouldn't tolerate this out of us, so get in there, baby Cephas, and give me 15 push-ups, and you better repent at the altar. That's a 4-year-old little boy. You deal with that totally different. Dr. Cephas, how has this affected your perspective?
I do want to say Cephas does do push-ups.
Awesome.
By the way.
Start him young.
First of all, thank you, Pastor, for having us over here. It is an honor to be to serve us in that capacity as college and career leaders for this long. And just to give some context for those that don't know, after youth, they come up to college and career about 18, and they can stay all the way up to 30 unless they get married first, whichever one comes first. Or sometimes some people just leave. Some don't even tell me they're leaving. And
they just don't come back.
They just don't come back. So if that makes sense, I think probably the biggest difference, and I didn't hear anything anybody said because I was thinking about what I was going to say.
Sure.
So if I'm repeating something
man.
else, just nod and assume that you've never heard it before.
A PhD man.
But I think probably the biggest thing is recognizing how much set that age you are when you get there.
Already set.
Even in your Christianity. Because even though we know, and those of you with older kids, parenting don't stop. I mean, just because they're 18, some of them need money, etc. But I've watched people come in, and if they don't get married, or even after they get married, from 18 to 30, and I'm not just talking about people in this church. Even when I was a high school teacher, seeing people after they graduate my classroom, how much diminishing return, how little you can adjust most of your personality, attitude. You just got that much wiggle room to work with.
That's a good word.
It's just set. And so I can remember, say, people that Luke and Melissa or Pastor will be talking to me about when they were in youth with some things that they're dealing with, and they'll get in college and career. And I would almost say very few people make any adjustments. And if they do, it's that little.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I was like that when I hit 18, whatever my parents put into me, that it becomes very difficult. You can be better at obeying the word or not sinning, but as far as in your disposition and what your parents could have put in you to adjust you and prepare you for life, it rarely changes.
Yeah.
And that's something that I could have read in the book, but I've seen dozens of people come through, not just college and career, but just at the high school. I mean, hundreds of people.
Hundreds.
And it's very little changing. So it really puts in me that whatever we need to do that we don't like and that it is changeable, it's very changeable at this age, 4, 5, 3, 6, 7. But once you get to that age, it's just,
it's set. It's what we've been teaching for a while, that basically we don't have till they're 18 to shape them. I've been teaching for about 7 or 8 years now that according to Jewish tradition and neuroscience, we have till they're about 13. Once they're 13, that disposition is set. And so I've made the distinction between formative discipleship, which is what we should be doing from the time we receive them into our arms at the birthing table. We should be discipling them and forming them. And by the time they hit 13, our work or lack of it is set. Now, that's not the end of everything, thank God for mercy, but from that point, we transition from formative discipleship to restorative or reparative, however you want to. We want to transition it. We want to not just form them now, we have to begin to repair things, change things. And that's where a lot of prayer has to take place. Now, again, not to discourage any parent who's maybe realizing they could have done better, all of us in here are in some form of reparative discipleship. And we're doing okay. We're serving Jesus. We love Him. We're aspiring to be clean. We're preaching the Word. We're prospering. So all is not lost. But the emphasis of this tonight is focus on those first 13 years and realize you have to lay down your life so that your kids can have some. Don't have kids as a side hustle. Don't have kids because you're weird and incomplete and think a kid is a cool little pet that you can put on Facebook to get all sorts of weird likes and dress them in Zulily attire. This is a responsibility. This is stewardship. It's a ministry to have a child and know you have 13 years to set them on their path. It was at 13 that Christ went to Jerusalem and debated with the Pharisees. And I wonder how many of our kids at 13 could debate theology. They could debate Star Wars, Marvel, comic books, beauty techniques, and the latest social media influencer, but can our kids really debate theology even with a peer? But Joseph was selected as the surrogate father for Christ because he kept the law of Moses. And that speaks to Deuteronomy 6 and Ephesians 6 and Malachi 4. It's the father who is responsible for the discipleship and the formation of the child. Mothers play a vital role. We know mothers are the primary nurturers, but if daddy's not on board, it can be very, very difficult. And so if you have 4 kids, every one of your kids is going to be different. One in 4 kids could be raised in a brothel and turn out okay. Because that's just the luck of the draw and the personality. Just, I'm going to come out of this, I'm going to beat it. But the other 3 will be lost forever. And in your house, you might have one kid that succeeds and you had nothing to do with it, but it's just their personality and their desire. Your heart has to be, all of my kids are going to succeed, and I will adapt my parenting to every one of them because they all have different needs. Next question, because we do have a lot we want to try to cover and we don't want to be here till too late. What are some of the top concerns or challenges you see among our young people that they are reluctant and afraid to discuss or bring to their parents? What are some of the top concerns or challenges you see among our young people that you can tell they're reluctant or maybe afraid to share with their parents? Dr. Steve, if we start with you, we'll just go back and forth.
I think just probably the heart of just being a Christian is catching God's heart. Reading the Bible, going to church, praying, doing all these things is to live a better life, to serve God better. Not necessarily the other way around. In other words, we're not living just to read the Bible. We're not living just to, worship. All of that is to make us live a godly life. And I think that there is sometimes a disconnect that I see with the younger people, whereas something doesn't click or feel real to them, but it's just the way it is. And it's almost like I can't tell mom, dad, or even me or pastor or anybody that I'm afraid to mess up. Yeah. That's probably the biggest thing. It's just the fear of messing up or how it's going to, the implication of it is greater than the mess up itself.
Right.
it's just what is it going to mean that everybody found out that I did X, Y, Z is much, much greater than what that X, Y, Z is.
Sure.
In other words, not pleasing God or not pleasing God is not the real thing here. It's just that I've got to not mess up. Because my parents are going to know, they're going to talk to Pastor about it, they're going to talk to Mr. Luke about it, then they're going to talk to, and it becomes this big thing where now messing up is just something that you hide.
Yeah.
Until it's too late.
One of the things we have to aim for in our homes is that our house is the safest place to mess up. And our kids have to have a liberty and a freedom to fail with a good heart. And if we browbeat them, as I know some of you do, if we browbeat them over the smallest little thing, they're going to say real quick in their heart, I tell you one dang thing, I'm never telling mom and dad nothing again. And their heart will cuss. Blankety blank, I'm never blankety blanking that blank blank a blank. Because they got their head bit off on something that was not significant. So now they don't even have a safe place to land when they fall. And mom and dad should be a giant trapeze net where they safely practice life and safely mess up and safely ruin a relationship, and mom and dad help them clean it up. What that comes back to is the emotional stability of our parents, realizing all is not lost. I think we're Southerners, so we have a tremendous addiction to facades. I think we're afraid of what people will think about us if our kids mess up. And they're kids, they're going to mess up. They have to be able to mess up. They ought to be able to do it with a good heart and not be afraid that mom and dad are going to yell at them, scream at them, or beat them over the head with something, or hold it against them for a month. But the parents can say, listen, okay, why'd you do that? Let's talk about why you said that. Let's talk about why you punched that kid in the face on the playground. I don't appreciate you doing it, but let's talk about this. And then we're going to have to spank you because we don't go around punching people. But if your kid says, well, you know what? He was bullying this other kid and pushed him down, and I just can't stand to see that. Then you're like, all right, I'm probably not going to spank you. Let's find another way to deal with playground bullies, though. Not everything needs the spanking, but everything needs patience and a tender ear. Because our kids, they've got to feel the safest to fail in your home, and they've got to feel the safest to fail here. And we have to figure out how to make that work in our home.
And just one last thing to add to that, Pastor. I think that the why something is wrong is important. Just that the word said not to do it is not sufficient. Because in order to change a behavior, you have to accept and receive why this behavior is not better.
Yeah.
And I know, yes, we walk by faith, but that's so we get to the place where we see the profit of the word. And if our kids never, or even our own life, if we don't never understand and see why this is not a good thing to do, rather than just, well, the word said this. Well, yes, Dad, I know the word said this, but, well, no, there's no but. We just do the word in this house. That type of thing. And it's just, there's just we can't talk about our emotions. Why, in your example, why did I hit that kid? Well, because I was angry. We can't talk about those type of things. And I think it's just not the only way I can discuss is it's just not a reality there. Whereas you just talk about stuff. I know what the word said. I mean, we all know what the word said when we mess up. Yeah. But we do it anyway. So I think that just having the reality and going beyond just because the Bible said not to.
There has to be a liberty in our homes to discuss emotions, feelings, anger, resentment. You got to be able to let your kids vent at you and you not jump on them and bite their head off because you feel threatened. I understand that our kids need to respect us, but if in their moment they say, I just hate you, I'm just so mad at you, say, okay, I get it. Why? I love you. You believe I love you? But some of us can't even allow our kids to be honest. So you're teaching them to be facade liars. Why can't they just be honest? Dr. Barclay's taught me as a pastor, I'm to allow any one of you to swing on me once. Come in there, cuss me, chew me out. Some of you have. I disagree. You make me so mad I want to spit sometimes, Pastor. All right, I appreciate that. I'm here for you, right? I let people cuss in my office. I don't scream at them. I don't bite their head off. They're in an emotional place. Let them calm down, and let's talk about it. I think we're so legalistic. We want our kids to be better than we are, and we're not even trying ourselves. So we have to give them this grace and this mercy to be kids and learn right from wrong and not be afraid to bring it to us. We've prayed for years that our kids would bring everything to us. And on more than one occasion, I've gone to severely punish one of my kids for bringing me something, and the Lord's had to check me. And he said, you've prayed that they would bring you everything. And if you beat them over this, they won't bring you anything else. And in a sense, it's the Lord saying, you're going to discipline them, but it doesn't have to be like you think it's going to be. They are bringing you their fault, their mistake. Now walk them through the cleanup. Even when Cain killed his brother, the Lord didn't destroy him. He said, what have you done? It was a discussion, then a punishment. He didn't come out of nowhere with a flaming sword and just roast the guy. He said, where's your brother? What did we talk about? Why have you done this? Oh, and we need to learn from that rather than being this legalistic, fearful, worried about what people are going to think about me if my kid's goofy. We're going to think your kid's a kid. That's what we're going to think. All right, let's go on because we have other questions we want to hit because we could easily settle on any one of these for a long time. Chantel, anything you want to add to that?
I think that's pretty much it.
Okay.
That sums up
That's
my
fine.
opinions too.
Dr. Crystal, anything?
I just thought about a couple of the students I've had who have talked about not being able to talk to their parents about questions about their faith.
Yeah.
And I think we sometimes feel like we have to defend God, and I've had to say, you can walk through asking God the questions, and he's big enough to handle whatever your parents wouldn't address. As I've had students, particularly students from same kind of Pentecostal charismatic background, they'll talk to me where they haven't talked to their parents, and they kind of want to walk away. And once they introduce themselves as Christian, we can have conversations about that on the campus. So I think they might not be sure, might not necessarily believe all the way, or kind of like Dr. Cephas said, not really know if this is really real, and not know how to talk about that. But I think God can handle that.
Our children ought to be able to bring us everything. Absolutely anything and everything, which means we ought to be equipped and prayed up to discuss anything and everything. As a daddy, you shouldn't blush when your daughter wants to know about breasts or sex or periods or pubic hair or lactation. You're a man. I don't care what kind of weird, taboo, riddled, perverse doctrine you were raised under. It's time to be a man. Curse your doctrine and your upbringing and be a man, and let your daughter be able to bring you everything, because you don't want her to bring it to the Google. She'll Google it, she'll end up a sex fiend. So as parents, fathers in particular, we ought to be able to answer anything and everything. And don't settle for that cop-out. Well, just trust me because I said so. That's a lazy caveman response. Me personally, I want my children to bring me absolutely anything. My kids, especially Lydia, when she was doing gymnastics, she learned all of her cuss words at gymnastics. And I let her use all of them in my car so we could discuss them. I taught her the origin of most of them because there's an origin to them. I taught her why this one is a medical term and this one is a biological term and why this one is a shipping term and this one is just vulgar. We talked about all of it, and I'm not going to thump her because she's learning language. Now, if she uses them inappropriately, we're going to discuss that and then beat some bums and wash the mouths out with soap. My point is, as a dad, it can't just be go talk to your mother about this. You want your child, especially as a father, you want your daughters to be able to bring you everything. And you want your sons to be able to bring you everything. And if it's taboo to you, it'll be taboo to them. But there's no such thing as a taboo in Christ because he created everything. So we have to be able to have theological answers. Coming back to Dr. Crystal's point. We have to have biological answers, scriptural answers. If you don't know, say, you know what, Daddy doesn't know, but why don't we go to bed? I'm going to stay up tonight and get you an answer so that your kids think you hung the moon even when they're 45 and you're 70. One of the things I absolutely adore about my pastor, Dr. Barclay, and his daughter, Dawn Randolph, who's a friend of mine, Dawn Randolph still looks up to her daddy and respects him and trusts him like he hung the moon because she never outgrew him. She's still trying to catch up, but as a man of God, Dr. Barclay is still growing in Christ too. What happens in our circles is about 13 or 14, our kids begin to see behind the veil. They begin to realize mom and dad are hypocrites. They begin to realize mom and dad don't practice what pastor preaches at home. And kids at about 12 and 13 begin to realize this guy I call dad is not worth honoring. This woman I call mom, she's a hypocrite. And that begins to lay up some bitterness in the heart of a child. Your job as a parent is to always stay 30 years ahead of your kid. Instead of the Google, let you be the one they come to with a doctrinal question. Let you be the one they come to with a sex ed question. Say, you don't need the Google, you need the dad. Don't Google it, dad it. Be able to answer questions. It really is a shame that charismatics have to go to college to find a spirit-filled professor to ask theological questions about. What happened in that home? That's not in this church, that's somebody else's experience, but it's also a shared experience here. Miss Melissa, what are some of the top concerns and challenges you see that our youth can't bring to their parents?
Just want to add to that. I think it's sometimes easier when they're younger to entertain these questions that they bring us, and we do it maybe sometimes a better job at explaining. But our youth still have silly questions. They still have questions that may seem like they should already know those answers. And I feel like a lot of times they bring things to us and we downplay it.
Yep.
And they should already know that. You should already have that down. I've already told you 15 times. But they like, sorry, I'm calling you young kids, youth, but they're like young kids in that, and they still need our time. They need us to let them know that what they're bringing us is important, and that we want to take time to discuss that, even if it's the 15th time. Sometimes I feel like that becomes a barrier because they know I've already brought that to you. I've already brought this to you. You downplayed it. Nothing came of it, so I'm not going to bring that to you again.
Kids can tell when they're an inconvenience to their parents.
For sure. And I don't think we mean to do it, but we honestly think, you're 15, you should know that. If they're asking you, just answer.
Yeah.
That's
be thankful they're asking.
Yes, exactly. So I just wanted to make sure that point was brought to light, that just because they're 15, just because they're 18, answer them if they're asking. Like you said, they're going to ask someone. It might as well be their parents.
This would hurt my heart. And I'm going to ask you, and it's not scientific poll, what percentage of our youth do you think believe they are an inconvenience to their parents? Let's say we have 20 youth. How many of those do you think believe their parents would disagree, but their perception is, I'm an inconvenience to my parents?
I think they all would think that at some point. I think they've all had those thoughts, but on a consistent basis, probably half of them.
Half of them. So you parents, listen to that. Somehow you live or interact with your kids to make them feel like they're an inconvenience to your existence. Which the devil will then say, then why were you even born? Which then the devil will say, so what's your life worth? So why are you even here? And now we're in a suicidal trip. All because you can't put your phone down to pay attention to your children. Or you think their questions are dumb. Right now, my girls love to tease me because they read the Bible. And they have found the proverb that says, may her breast satisfy thee at all times. So my girls are asking me, so do you like boobs, Dad? They're doing it now because they can tell it makes me uncomfortable. And it gets very personal. And then they see the break in my armor, and they exploit it. So, Daddy, do you? And then, Mommy has them. Do you like them? And in that moment, I have to decide, am I going to be a father and a representative of the God who made breasts, libido, marital intimacy? Am I going to act like this thing's gross and dirty and lie to my kids? Or am I going to be uncomfortable and say, I do like them because God made me to? Because I have taught my girls, you're going to get them one day and boys like them, so you're going to keep them covered up. Why do boys like them? I don't know. This was one conversation. I don't know. Well, aren't you a boy, Dad? Yeah. Do you like them? This is our prayer time at night before we go to bed. Yeah, I like them. Okay, so then why do boys like them? I can't even really tell you because the Bible commands. It's in the Bible, yeah. So I can be taboo and say, go talk to your mother. She's going to tell you the same thing. I don't know why they like them. You have to be willing to give your kids time and be honest with them, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Because to a child, everything is blank. They have no concept, no frame of reference on any of it. We have to teach them that. And if I will be honest with my kids, they will continue to bring me absolutely everything, which is what I've prayed for since the time they were conceived. that they would bring, I would be their God until they could meet my God. That I could be a representative of him until one day I can hand them off to my God. But until then, I'm the intermediary, teaching them about our Savior and about his doctrine, and I want them to always trust me before anybody and everybody. Amen. All right, that's good, Dr. Crystal. Then Miss Melissa. Now, Luke, what would you say?
So we've been doing this 11 years. So over the 11 years, we've had kids with suicidal thoughts. We've had kids with homosexual thoughts. We've had kids, and this isn't our youth group. These are not kids on the outside.
These are our kids, homegrown.
These are home. So let's get those thoughts out of our head right now. These are ours. But one thing is, they come to us with these things because they know how mom and dad will react. I know it's been mentioned, but we say, well, we need to talk to mom and dad about it. I don't want to. I don't want to. They're reluctant to do that. They're reluctant to talk to them about the struggles they have because of what mom and dad will do. And we have to, at that time, decide, well, do we get mom and dad involved? Do we work with this kid? Because now do we want to break that trust? What do we want to do here? And
mom and dad get embarrassed and mad at you guys.
Yep, because
they're ashamed and fearful is the honest truth.
Right.
And they don't like the fact that you know what goes on in their home.
Well, and then on the other side is even sharing good things. Dad's not excited. Mom doesn't pay attention.
Care.
Mom don't care. They don't care. And they come to us and tell us. And sometimes we get more honor. And we get more of the excitement. And we get more of knowing what the kids are going through. Because they trust us. They like us. Because
you demonstrate biblical love.
Right. Yeah. So.
And respect.
Right.
We are, in this church, we're familiar with the concept of the sin of familiarity. Have you ever considered that you can become too familiar with your kids? Sin against them because that's just my kid. And we got to make sure we respect them and honor them because they are God's creation. They're just our steward. And I don't doubt our love. I just doubt how well we do love. We don't know how to properly love them. Luke and Melissa, you can trust your kids with them because they will pray for them and walk them through stuff. And I would encourage all of you parents, because some of you have cut attitude towards them. Some of you refuse to hear anything they have to say, and they know it. They know the skinny on your kid. But they don't do that to leverage anything. They do it to help your kids. And they've shared with me that there's tension between them and some of you because they know where you're failing and you're ashamed and ostracize them because you're embarrassed. Except they're in the ministry position and they're anointed of God to help our youth. Just so you know that Lydia went with us to the youth conference, and so Lydia was under their care for several days, and they've come to us and told us things our daughter did wrong, and we're fine with it. In fact, just before service tonight, Luke said, your daughter was doing this, and I need you to know that. And he said he was really reluctant to correct his pastor. He said, I would just be cautious with how she responds that way. And I said, I appreciate that, what you're saying. I've never heard before. It may be this or that, but we'll look into it. If you love your kids, I would think you'd want as much spiritual help from every direction as possible, and not just think, well, that's just Luke and Melissa. They don't know what it is yet. They're anointed. And they probably know your kids better than you do at this point. Our kids, they can tell when they're loved, and they can tell when they're an inconvenience, and that hurts my heart, and I don't want that to ever be. Yeah, absolutely.
By the way, you guys asked us. Pastor and Miss Amanda called us and checked in, and that allowed us to be able to be honest and to tell. Because I'm going to be honest with you guys, we're not going to hunt down parents and give you the skinny on how Iowa went. If you come and ask, we'll tell you, but then if you start to give us excuses, then we'll hush. If you start to, I won't get into all of that. We love your families. We adore your kids. We have no dog in the fight, though. We are here to encourage and to help. So I did want to say that. We didn't go to pastor and say, Lydia did this, she needs to work on this. They literally asked us, can you give us some things we can work on? We're having studies at home. Can you give us some points that we can discuss at home? Can you rate her? She's rated herself. Let's see how they compare. So I wanted to say that. I appreciated that because we were able to work together. And I feel like you said that God uses us, and I'm thankful He does, but I feel like we can work together on some things so much better if more were willing, if I might say that.
Yep. And I just perceive maybe somebody doesn't like the concept of rating your behavior. That's the rest of your life. God's going to rate us one day and give us rewards accordingly. The Bible says, judge yourself. I told Lydia going into the trip, said, sweetie, this is a big honor. You're not old enough to be in youth. The only reason you get to go is because I'm going. I'm going to turn you over to Luke and Melissa. You're going to answer to them, and I'm going to ask how you do, so you be on your best behavior. But this is a high honor. So she was very mindful that she had to toe a very high line. That's why I wanted to check in on her, because she knew she's the preacher's kid, and she's getting to do a very special thing. And I don't want to raise my kids with favoritism that'll destroy them. If we're doing something special, I want them to know, don't mess this up. That's responsibility. She's free to mess up, and honestly, we rejoice because she rated herself on a scale of 1 to 10, and it's exactly what Melissa said rated her. We felt pretty good about that. We still corrected stuff. We're proud of her. She had a great time. I bragged on her. It wasn't just, why weren't you a perfect 10? I said, man, I'm so proud of you. You had so much fun, sweetie, and there's always something to adjust. We're talking about parenting. Your mindset is still stuck in this current generation, which is everybody gets a trophy. You don't get a trophy. You don't deserve one. That's why you're blowing back on the idea that we rated our kids. Come on. Doesn't your boss give you an annual review? You just expect a raise because you have a pulse. All right, let's move on. What advice do you have for people with children under 13 who want to see their children grow up to walk with God? Luke, what advice?
I'd say make sure you're sitting down with them nightly, daily, and talking to them about God things for sure, but also just what's going on, because then that's the teachable moments. How are you feeling? What is going on? The other day I asked Jude, so what are you thinking about? He's nothing. I'm like, well, you're right down your daddy's alley. So that's good. We're good.
Sweet. Let's just sit here in silence.
But just what's going on? How are you feeling, son? When I do this, what does it do to you? Do you feel like I'm a good dad? And I asked my 8-year-old.
Yeah.
Just doing those, because then you hear where their heart is, and I said, son, you can say anything you want to me, and you can. He's growled at me before, and it's not because he's a furry. It's just because he was emotional, and that's how it came. And we're like, we don't do that. Here's how we handle that, But just talk to them, and actually look at them, and be prepared for what they have to say, and don't get irate about it.
Yeah.
It'll be okay. You're supposed to be the adult, so it will be okay. But that's one thing I would say, especially for the younger ones. Talk to your kids about how they're feeling. What are they feeling? Because in that, you will be able to see what they're going through, and then you'll be able to take the Word of God and help tailor it and put it into a nice little package to help them.
The other thing I perceive is we were taught for so long to ignore feelings. But the fact remains, God has given us a full gamut of emotions. And in God's revelation of himself in the Bible, you see that he's a jealous God. He's an angry God. He's a peace-filled God. He's a joyful God. He's a victorious God. He's a vindictive God. He's a rewarding God. God has all these emotions. And I grew up hard Southerner, and my dad was a World War II vet's son. So I could see a lot of the farm. My dad came from farmers in deep South Louisiana, lineage of farming all the way back to the 18th century. There's a total stoicism, because we don't talk about it. Men don't cry. Jesus did. What do you say about that? I'm sorry your daddy lied to you. He had a horrible dad too. In getting to travel, I haven't been to everywhere in the world. I've been to about 9 or 10 countries. You see, some cultures are very stoic because we don't discuss things. And that gets passed down generationally from culture to culture, generation to generation. So you have a culture, a group of people that have a very narrow bandwidth on emotions. Yet God's given us a whole list of them. When we let our children discuss them, we actually can help them. Now, that's jealousy, and this is how we handle it. I just want to punch you in the face, Daddy. Okay, that's rage, and this is how we handle it. Now, you're not going to punch Daddy, are you? No, sir, but I really want to. Okay, what do you think would happen if you punched me? Oh, you would spank me so hard. That's right. You're doing good process reasoning. If we say, we don't talk about it, just shut that up, we cause our kids to turn introverted and they callous their soul. So then how will they operate in faith when half of their heart is dead? Because so much of the Lord's faith was motivated by compassion or anger or jealousy. The zeal of the Lord has accomplished this. And we're Americans. A lot of us come from like hardened country folk or Western pioneers where it's just rough and tough like rawhide. And that was talking about grandma. And now we're trying to turn the corner on this thing so that our kids have a full expression of the nature of God in them, which is a full range of emotions, from anger to love, from hatred, because God hates things, to compassion, and everything in between. And if you're not careful, you'll cauterize all your kids' emotions so they'll look just like you, and it isn't doing well for you. And that's why we talk about, how do you feel? What did you like? We always ask our kids, what was your favorite thing? What was your least favorite thing? But did something make you mad? What's going on? We want to be able to help them process that.
Yeah, and just real quick, and I'll take it on. But please do it when they're young, because if you don't, or if you cut it like that and you cauterize them and you do all that, when they get older, they're going to be introverted. They're not going to bring nothing to you. I'm going to even say there's probably not even hope they will. Yeah. Because it's been done to them so much. They'll come to us. They won't want to tell you. But the other thing too is then they start dealing with depression, oppression, suicidal thought. Like that's the emotions they start dealing with, and then they go and find how to relieve that through a boy, through social media, through something else, and they will not come to you. So we have to make sure of that too, because we have young kids, is make sure we let them talk to us and be willing to apologize and say, forgive me. That is a big key to these kids.
Social media is popular with children because they are desperate for affirmation. And if they don't get it from mom and dad, any stranger will do. So you have to be their biggest fan. You have to brag on their art, brag on their music, brag on their clothes. That looks so good. You did so awesome. I love that Lego thing. That's amazing. If you don't affirm them, they're going to get a hold of social media and they're going to be a whore for likes. They're going to do anything and everything to earn a like. And social media and the algorithm will turn their personality so that they live for the affirmation they weren't getting from us. So we have to make sure we fill every hole in their heart so they don't have to ever go to the world. That's why the social media has been deemed and judged and studied to be so dangerous, because it's taken the place of parents. And when parents should be shaping and forming their personality, social media does it in half the time. They look forward to getting on social media and they don't look forward to being with mom and dad. But they used to look forward to being with mom and dad, but mom and dad turned them off because mom and dad were addicted to social media too. And really, this is a horrible testimony. Miss Melissa.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of how to start this, but showing them that serving God is fun.
Amen.
That being at home as a family that loves God and serves God, it's fun. We don't have to go to church. We get to go to church. We're not having to go to pre-service prayer. We get to
Amen.
go to pre-service prayer. And even, oh man, it's just so important to just give them attention. You know, we're talking about 13 and below, but 13 years and below, but show them that you can stay up all night and enjoy your time together as a family. I know even the youth, we stayed up till 3 a.m. one night in Iowa. And I was like, see, Christians, we can have fun and we can do, you know, like I think sometimes I'll talk for youth, but sometimes we get to a point where we're thinking we're missing out on something. Like someone else is having fun and we're missing out on that fun. But we can have all the fun that we need and that we desire, but we can't have that with a dad that's on his phone the entire night. We can't have that with a mom that is stuck in gossip or stuck in whatever we get stuck in. And I'm talking to me. I'm preaching to me, just so you know. Like, our kids need to come home and have fun and know that because we serve Jesus, we can go do these things as a family. We can have a family that loves us. So, yeah, just make sure they know that serving God is fun, that we are blessed because of this, because we choose to serve God. We want to show them, we want to walk this out in front of them because that's going to shape their desire to even serve God. That will shape their desire to serve God, how they see us serve God at
Yeah.
home.
One of the things on our curriculum from Godly Parenting, Wisdom and Regrets from Spirit-Filled Parents, one of the regrets we have here somebody gave to me, most of these were from pastors who lost kids to the world. Neglected kids will hate the thing their parents love the most out of spite. And if it's NASCAR, you're neglecting your kids for NASCAR, your kid will say, I hate NASCAR because it took my daddy away from me. If it's church, they'll hate church. Church took my daddy away from me. I hated God because God took my daddy. But it doesn't have to be that. Take your kid to NASCAR, take your kid to church, and do it together as a family. Kids can't handle to be neglected because they're not designed to be. Don't have kids if you want to neglect them. Give them up for adoption. We'll take them. We'll raise them. We'll teach them how to love God so they don't go to hell from the church. Dr. Crystal, we got to move along because we're not getting through any of these. We're not going to finish this list of questions tonight. I want to hit some of the higher points. Anything you want to add? How would you encourage parents with kids under 13 to help see their children grow to walk with God?
I appreciate everything that's been said already, and I would just add trying to encourage your children to love investigating the Word of God and exploring
Amen.
that together and trying to put that in everything, which is just going back to the Deuteronomy 6.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
maybe sometimes we don't really know what that looks like, but it's just really, what did you talk about in class today? Like, what did that mean?
Amen.
And make sure that they are getting it for themselves and not making it so that we are beating them over the head with the Word, but really just integrating that into our everyday. Because it blesses me when I can see kids speak the Word and live by it. And I can think about how parents give us examples and non-examples. Hey, everybody over here, we never look this way. Praise the Lord. Parents give us examples and non-examples, right? And so I think I'm thankful for the examples that my parents gave me that I want to follow and things they did that I want to do better. But I am most thankful that they gave me the Word of God. Because wherever we fail as parents, wherever we're weak as parents, if we can point our children to the fact that the Word of God is true no matter what, and I tell Dammy, if mom and daddy lose their minds, which we won't, praise the Lord, and we stop following Jesus, you stay with Jesus because he's the truth.
Amen.
And if we can hammer that home to them, then that will always be able to bring them back to a way to have victory over whatever is the issue we didn't succeed in teaching them.
In my, when I was preparing for the Wisdom and Regrets from Spirit-Filled Parents, I asked a lot of preachers' kids who were still serving God. I said, why do you think you still serve God when so many preacher kids backslide? And the one unanimous testimony I got from all of them is, my parents lived this at home. My daddy was the same at church as he was at home. My daddy was the same in the pulpit as he was at home. My daddy prayed at home. My daddy studied the Bible at home. My mom and daddy prayed together. They all said the same thing. One of the young ladies I know who's actually moved to go help her daddy with her church, she said, I would get up in the morning and I would hear my daddy interceding for our church family from his bedroom. And she said, and I knew he was serious, that this was real. And the other thing I've heard is that when parents are fake at home and they have a facade at church, and the kids get old enough to hear what the pastor's saying and the elders are saying and the leaders are saying, and they're smart enough to put two and two together, realize my mom and dad don't believe this, that's when they begin to hate God. Like, what are we doing? Why are we wasting our Sundays? Why are we wasting our Wednesdays? This is a facade. Mom and dad don't believe this. Why do we do this? Why are we giving money? The kids aren't dumb. If it wasn't real, I wouldn't want to be here either. I would not be here if it wasn't real. I can make more money doing something else, not being here dealing with you. Like when I was working at the mine, that's easy and a lot of money. And nobody talked back, got offended, slandered me. You just set dynamite, blow it up, and grade the rock, and move on. It's pretty easy work. If kids don't see us living it at home, you'll teach them to mock God. And that's one of the ways it has to be real. It has to be a part of what you do. It's Deuteronomy 6. This is who we are. This is what we do. I just told Manda, I said, honey, it's time for us to start sharing our personal testimonies with our kids. Our kids need to know where we've come from. Because we've just always been here to them. We've always been pastors because they were born into this. But what sacrifice did mommy make? What sacrifices did daddy make? What did I do to get here? What did it cost me in serving God? What kind of hell have I been through? What did the Lord rebuke me over? At some point, I'll have to share my failures with my kids so they can learn from me. We teach them about David's failures and Paul's failures and Peter's failures. Why not teach them about your failures? Amen. Because they're going to ask you at some point, they're going to say, Mommy, have you ever fornicated? Daddy, did you ever do drugs? You going to look at their face and lie to them? Or are you going to say, there was a time I was not saved, and Daddy did every wicked thing you can imagine, but God had mercy. And then you can go into your born-again experience. And they'll say, well, gosh, if Dad could give his life to God, I want to give my life to God more. Miss Chantel.
Just to echo some of what has already been said, be engaged. And
Amen.
I'm preaching this to myself and us because we have little kids. Be engaged and not just present, because you can be present and not engaged. And that's not just on your phone. You can be sitting in the same room with them. And I mean, for me, cooking, cleaning, like always on my mind, you know, you can be in the same room, even just you're tired, just sitting there. And that's not to mean that we can never, you know, have just a minute or whatever, but we have to be engaged. Little Cephas has been asking me all weekend, Mommy, will you build a house with me? Will you build a house with me? And I was doing dishes and other things, and then finally I was like, yes, let's build a house. And so we didn't even build a house. We just went and took their little toy hammers and banged on the little pillows in the living room, and that was building a house. And that meant so much more than the fact that we still have dishes in the sink, you know? And so being engaged, not just present, is kind of, and I have, not to get off on anything else, but we're currently trying to simplify our life. Basically, I have found minimalism and drank the Kool-Aid, and but I bring that up in this
Cephas
because
looks defeated. He looks so forlorn over there.
He is on board.
Pray for me.
Took him a little bit.
Is he the collector? Is he the hoarder? Hallelujah.
He actually is better than I am. However, maybe more in theory, but he's doing great. But I say that because simplifying, we have too much stuff, and it's causing too much distraction.
Yeah.
I don't have time to go through all of these clothes every single season. So you know what? We get clothes enough for 2 weeks. That's all we need. And then the rest we're getting rid of. Because we need more time with our kids to be intentional.
And not just managing stuff.
Yes, and teaching them about the things of God. I would much rather, like, these are eternal things versus natural things. And so whoever said cleanliness is next to godliness, I think that they were right. I don't know, it's not a verse in the Bible, but that's kind of why we're trying to simplify, because we have to be more engaged. We can't have all of this stuff. We have to give them, they have to know that we are present with them, engaged,
Amen.
Not just their parents. And we're
because I said so.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Ugh. Dr. Cephas, what would you say? What would you add to what's been said to help under 13 learn to walk with God?
Probably everything that's been said is probably more important, but I think one of the things that also will be important is just having the freedom in your house. I think that's one of the things I see that lacks a lot.
Freedom at home.
Having the freedom at home. We've already talked about freedom to mess up, making sure the gospel is fun. But, you know, it's just, you know, my little boy has a lot of energy. He comes up here, just wanting to give you a hug. He's jumping around. I'm not going to spank him for that. He's a little boy.
He's all right.
You know, he's just going to be normal. I'm not going to make him weird by just making him
a pet on a leash.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that sometimes we get too caught up in, like, we got to do the word, and everything becomes so tight.
Yeah.
And I think if they can break out at home, they're going to break out somewhere else.
Yes. If home is run like a militant boot camp, they're going to cut the barbed wire fence and escape.
You know, it's just one of the ways that I was just sitting here thinking about it. I think that something that might help is, you talked about being too familiar with your kids. If Demi was to spend the night with us or to visit with us, how would I treat him in that moment? Let's say he had a question about something. And so when Cephas asked that question, no matter how tired I am, I can think of it as how I would react.
Yeah.
Because, you know, sometimes we may treat our kid differently, worse than we would treat it if Abigail came over or Carter came over.
That's the sin of familiarity.
You know? And it's just a little trick. We just do it. We say that to ourselves all the time. If you're in an issue and you don't know what to do, how would you tell somebody else, another Christian brother or sister who comes to you with that same issue, what would you tell them? And I think sometimes that helps with our kids. If we just think, you know what, if this was a kid at church that walked up to me and needed this thing or asked me this thing, how would I react? Would I be instantly upset with them?
Amen.
Like I would with my
Yeah.
So for what it's worth, I think that might help us curb some of that behavior a little bit. There's just so much tightness that I see around that the younger kids, and it makes me feel like, I don't care what you think about my boy in a way. He's running around. He's a boy.
He's a boy.
He has testosterone.
And he has joy. So we have to ask the question, kids are born full of joy. And they are full of life. They bound with life, which is why grandparents love them so much, because grandparents usually have dried up all the joy in their life. And so they like to have this little boost of joy with the little ones. But at some point, we so beat the life out of our kids that now they're 10 and have no joy. And now they're 13 and they're like sullen emos. So what do we do? Because one of our questions is, what makes some kids have joy at home and some kids don't have joy at home? But it comes back to the parental role. Home should be the place you can come home and be at ease. Home, you shouldn't have to leave home to find peace. And unfortunately, some youth have to leave home to find peace. And at 13 and 14, they're already saying, I can't wait to get out of here. I can't wait to get away from my mom and dad, because they find more freedom in the world than they do at their spirit-filled parents' home. That's a parental failure. So we have to make sure there's always joy, that there's, I don't know, you guys can be honest at home, be like goofy. It's okay to wear pajamas on a Saturday if you want to. There are some days Bud doesn't put on anything but underwear. He just wears underwear all day long. And let him go play in the backyard. I don't care. It's fun. The neighbors love it. When we go to Walmart, he dresses up like a cowboy with a 6-shooter, because people love that. There's got to be a joy and a freedom. But if you go home and it's even more oppressive than the world, your kids are going to hate you, hate the house, and can't wait to find some freedom. But it won't be biblical freedom. Cephas.
Can I have one more thing? Can I have an elder moment, please?
Elder moment.
It's just an elder
You've been an
moment.
elder for a long time. Elder moment.
So I'm going to close my eyes.
Okay.
You're
thinking about me.
There are some parents that I've seen in the hallways here, and your kid is not necessarily under 13. You are a minister to them and not a dad.
Yeah.
Stop it. It's just bad,
Yeah.
Anytime I see you're correcting them as a minister and not a dad, and I'm thinking, if this is the hallway,
what's home like?
What's home like? And I will volunteer. If you want to come ask me if this is you, I will tell you, because I want to help.
Yeah.
But it's just not. It's just sad. I'm just passing, and I'm thinking, this is like you're not talking. You're not witnessing to a heathen here. This is your child, and this is embarrassing in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And they're over 18, or they're older. They're over 10, and at least take them to the back or something. But it's just that they need a dad, not a minister.
They need a dad. Let's change up topics real quick, or because I have something I want to add to this one. And it is 8 o'clock now, so we'll maybe just do one more after this, and then, I don't know, we may have to do this again because we didn't get through but not even half these questions. What would you say is an under-celebrated aspect of our youth? In what areas might parents provide more affirmation and encouragement? What do you see as under-celebrated? Because all of our kids need more affirmation. So, Dr. Cephas, what do you see? What can we do better as parents to encourage?
This might be too general, but basically their personality and who they are. I see that a lot. Not everyone is just going to worship the same, want to dress differently. We're not talking about worldly dressing.
Yeah.
We're just talking about, and sometimes you may see a whole family and one kid is kind of different. Everyone's different, but this kid is very different. And, sometimes you just they don't feel like they get the time, the affirmation, just to be who they are. I know this is not it, so I'm going to use, them as an example. Let's say, my friend Brother Chad here, we all kind of know how he is and how his family is.
How is that?
If he were to have a kid that's an artist, that wants to be an artist and, just doesn't want to go hunting, he needs to support that.
Sure.
And that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Whatever that personality is, it doesn't matter if it doesn't fit what your home culture is. You
God's
have to
put
be
that
able
in
to see it,
Yeah.
recognize it, and let it bloom. You know, like my Cephas likes things that actually Chad likes, and I'm thinking, I don't like that. I don't want to do any of that. So you know what? I just go over to his house with him and just
Mr.
let him,
AJ
you know?
has become a football fan because Anderson likes football.
And that's just exactly what I mean. We just need to find out who they are. Yes, there's a grace to make them, mold them to us in the spiritual sense.
Right.
But the soul is unique to them.
Yeah.
They may have a disposition, you know, and I come from a family of non-artists, you know, and so I understand what I mean. It doesn't have to be whatever, like you're talking about AJ with football. Figure out what that kid likes, and even if you don't like it,
Learn it.
You know, my former pastor, Pastor Mike, brilliant with that. You know, all his 3 kids were different, and I remember when he told me that this person liked, I think it was military, so they just will watch
Military
war
Channel.
movies all the time, and the other one, like I think was a scientist and then a basketball player, and he had none of that, and he would do each one with that kid. So figuring out that again, not the spiritual side, we're getting that, but the natural part of
Yeah.
it, their soul, who they are, and celebrating in your family, I think it's a
And the
powerful
son who loved military has a career in the Marines now, and the son who loves science is a cancer researcher now. And he taught us that. He taught me that. All your kids will be different. Watch what grows out of them and feed it, because God will start to steer that thing. Instead of pruning everything, saying, that's not what we McMichaels do. See, why are you drawn to music so much? Or why are you drawn to art so much? Or why are you drawn to the military so much? Instead of trying to force them into our little limited mold. Chantel.
Basically the exact same thing. That is my answer. But just to add one little thing, don't make fun of your kids. If they don't have likes or whatever, that's the same. And I'm going to use this example. And you have to be careful and mindful if they're being influenced by the world for some of their likes, but sometimes they're just different. If you have a kid that decides they want to be a vegan, okay, that is totally like contrary to anything that we would, even me, I'd be like, okay, like we are not doing vegan in our house, okay? I'm not making you a separate meal, like we're not doing that. But find out why. Like, don't make fun of them or belittle them because you are gonna make them feel like what they like is not important. You're going to make them feel like they're weird. And maybe it is not a good influence on them. Maybe it's some worldly kid at school. Or maybe they're more health conscious. Maybe they're mindful that I want to know what I'm putting in my body because my body is a temple of the living God. And so you're trying to do it in that way. So even if, and that's, you know, maybe a different example, but sometimes the things that we deem as worldly, maybe they're not worldly. Maybe it's not coming from that. And we have to be, as parents, astute and judge it. If it is worldly, drive it out through prayer and helping them. But if it's not and it's different, they all have quirks and they're different. Both of our kids are totally different. Even at their young ages, but don't make fun of them. Even if it's stupid, don't make fun of them. Help them through it, okay? Like, help them see and don't belittle them because they won't bring it to you again. Yeah. And you will lose that voice in their life.
Somebody did make the point, if meat is so bad, why do they try to make all this vegan food taste like meat? So what do you think is under-celebrated about our youth? Mr. Luke?
I would just tag on to what they said is, you know, you may not like what they like. Don't tell them that. Get involved in it. My dad has always said, I don't know why you don't like bird dogs. I like bird dogs. I'm like, I don't care. I just don't like bird dogs. Leave me alone. I'm a grown man. So still talks to me about that. But, you know, Jude and Jovi have picked up this interest in music. I can't sing. I can't play.
You can barely make
do
sound.
that. So, but they have this interest. They love Jovi loves guitar and
Amen.
She loves to sing. She loves to stand right there and stare at Miss Kylie, when she's in practice. And Jude is interested in the drums and he's interested in piano. And I'm like, boys don't do. Oh, but we're gonna do piano. We're gonna do piano. You know, but my heart is drums. Stay with drums, boy. But it'll be all right but my mom teaches him piano. My mom teaches him all this stuff.
Amen.
And but it's brought something out of him that I didn't realize was in him.
Amen.
And so we're getting a drum set for him eventually. Don't tell him. Shh, you don't know.
They
But-
could be streaming it in the back.
No, he's probably not paying attention, so he'll be all right. We're working, huh? No. But don't tell him you don't tell him you don't like. Why do you like that? I don't like it. Well, we never did that.
Yeah.
Go and see, because you may enjoy it, because it brings a joy to them. And that is, for Jude to like this stuff, and for Joey, it brings a joy to me to see that they do it. And because it brings what God's put in them out of them. And you're going to try to put what you like in them, and that's not God.
And that doesn't advance anything.
And that doesn't advance anything.
It keeps you in the old generation.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good word. And I like what you all said. Ask them why. Why do you like this? What's the attraction to veganism? What's the attraction? Why do you like the piano, Jude? And he says, I'm just good at it. It makes me feel good. Feed it. There's nothing wrong with piano. It could be a worship tool. Something I think you said, Melissa, in an email, you said, you were commenting on the under-celebrating. You said, sometimes our correction is heavy instead of encouraging. And I know one of the things we all discussed is a lot of the heavy-handed correction that gets dealt out too much in homes. And I don't think we realize we can absolutely beat the life out of somebody always harping. And something else that's been set up here is that we've got to be mindful how much we correct versus how much we encourage. Because you can absolutely just beat a kid into submission and they will just go catatonic on you. It's called dissociative disorder. They look at you and they're not with you because they've learned to tune you out. It's catatonic. You just because that's how they cope with your verbal abuse. Are you listening to me, boy? Yes, sir. They just want to be done. We have to be mindful that we don't nitpick them to death. It's exhausting. I shared an example when we were discussing this, and I think Dr. Cephas said that's the best way to put it. Just an example from my own life. When I was a youth leader at my previous church, the pastor I served was a former engineer and very analytical, very by the numbers. And I taught a Sunday night service every 6 weeks, and he was using those times to teach me how to minister. Those are the services I would send to Pastor Vaughn here in Cookeville when I was serving in Knoxville to let Pastor Vaughn critique me. Pastor Vaughn was my spiritual father. Pastor Trey was my pastor. And Pastor Trey was very analytical. He was an industrial engineer. He understood system processes, and everything to him was just tick, 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 tick. So when I would teach, I'd minister more like Pastor Vaughn. I'd flow out of revelation knowledge and types and shadows. And so I'd preach on a Sunday, and usually Tuesday or Wednesday, we'd go get lunch at this Mexican restaurant. And it was supposed to be him helping me preach better. What it became was this ever-growing punch list of everything I wasn't doing right. And it was, everything you said was good, but I don't see how you got it. Because it's called revelation. That's what I'm thinking. You said this wrong. You need to say it this way. You said this wrong. I need to see how you do this. We got to connect the dots. So mentally, every time I go and have this lunch with him, I'm having to mentally make a list of everything I need to change within the next 6 weeks before I preach again, because I want to please my pastor. Well, my mind has a pretty large storage capacity, but after about a year and a half of that, preaching every 6 weeks, that punch list is 100 items long. And it got to where I was sick at my stomach every time it was my turn to preach. And I didn't want to do it anymore because I'm afraid I'm not going to hit these gates or check these boxes every time I stand to preach in the pulpit. And I remember one of the last times I did, I went to the bathroom on the last song and I just wanted to throw up. I was so sick at my stomach. I was so fearful because I just knew I was going to fail Pastor Trey again because I had every 6 weeks for the last year and a half. And all he ever did was nitpick me. He never encouraged me. I'd call up Pastor Vaughn. I'd send him the same tape. Pastor Vaughn, he would critique me, and to me, he was a much weightier voice. I said, how did I do, sir? What can I improve upon? You did great. Man, that's good teaching. I really enjoyed it. And even though that was a word of encouragement, it did not counterbalance being picked to death every 6 weeks at the Mexican restaurant. It's a miracle I still like Mexican food because I associated it with just brutal nitpicking and critique. We have to make sure as parents, you don't just nitpick your kid constantly. Stand up, straighten up, brush your hair. Did you brush your teeth? Straighten your tie, fix your pants. What's wrong with you, boy? What's wrong with you, girl? If that's all they ever hear, their heart says, yes, sir, yes, sir. Their mouth says, yes, sir. Their heart says, I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. Oh, here he comes. What am I not doing right now? And I think if some of our youth would be honest, you could go tell your parents, Pastor was talking about you. You need to make sure that you probably compliment your kids 5 times to 1 critique. Because the kids need it. They want to please us. But at some point, they'll become so heartless, just like the verse in Ephesians 6 says, they'll just say, forget it. What's the point? One of the biggest gays in town, one of our members witnessed to him years ago. And he said, why are you gay? Have you always known you were gay? He said, no, I used to go to the Church of Christ. He said, and I did my best to please God, and I did my best to please those deacons or those elders. He said, but they were always changing the rules. And at one point I just said, forget this. What's the point? He cussed, said blank this. He said, I'm done trying to please God. I'm going to do my thing. And he said, in my heart, I thought, what's the furthest thing from God I could be? And he said, gay. And by his own testimony, he chose to be gay to spite the nitpicking of religious leaders. I heard one time one of our kids said, I can't tell you the last time my dad said I looked pretty. Another said, I can't think of the last time I heard my dad say I love you. That is a disgusting shame. So that girl, she'll find a boy who will say, I love you, and you are beautiful, and can I get in your pants? And it will be daddy's fault, because he's supposed to fill everything she needs, all affirmation, all love, all encouragement, so that when a girl meets a boy, she's like, no, you're not good enough, because you're not my daddy. You need to come meet my man. It's called my dad. You're nothing like him. Why would I even give you the first 3 digits of my phone number, much less the last 4? You're nothing like my dad. But what happens is young girls, they meet a guy and say, you are so much better than my dad. Take me away. And it is the dad whose heart is not towards their children. I think what we ought to do is really evaluate ourselves, because the generations are only going faster. Culture is evolving quicker. We know we're living at the end of all things. We only got through like 4 questions out of 12. The answer is always this verse here. The hearts of the fathers must stay constantly on their children. Sons need one kind of parenting, daughters need another. It doesn't exclude moms, but it does come back to the dad. The father's heart must be towards his children. And don't have more kids than your heart can manage. And know that every kid needs different parenting. And just because the formula works good on the first one, the second kid's going to come out totally different, and you're going to have to totally overhaul your parenting. Some of you are afraid, man, the first kid was so good. What will the second one be like? Different. The second kid was so good. Are we going to draw a bad one? Probably. But God is able to make you parent, because he knows who he gave that kid to. He knows who he gave that soul and that spirit to, and that's you. He'll grace you to parent them. But if you're a lazy parent, you're going to lose your kids. That is a promise I give you. And I can't promise you that I can fix it. It is your job. God gave you those kids, not me. So for everyone with kids at home under 13, you have time, but you have to be vested in them. They have to see you praying. They have to see you in your Bible. May your kids see you in your Bible. May your kids see you and mama praying together regularly, not just over food. They're going to think all we do is bless food around here. May your kids see you walk it out, and may they see you give them wisdom to process every problem, every turmoil. May they be able to come and just vent at you, and you just sit there and listen to it. I asked one of my pastor friends, how come all 4 of your kids serve in the gospel ministry with you? He said, the first thing he said is, I never blew up when they brought me anything. And he's not one of these like stoic men who just has no pulse. He's a very dynamic guy. He said they would come and vent, throw things at me, cuss things, and I'd say, okay, you got that off your chest? Let's talk about that. Because he said, I learned if I blew up, they would shut up. And I can't afford that. All 4 of his kids serve in the ministry. 3 of them in his church, another at another church. That's a pretty good track record. This parenting comes back to dad. And you have to keep growing and changing if you want your kids to finish the gospel course. I don't know if we've helped anybody tonight. We've asked a lot of things. Mr. Lee, can we say something?
Yeah, just 1 or 2 things and I'll shut up. But for the younger ones, let there be some wildfire.
Yes.
Let it go. And we all say we trust God. God will show you when you need to put that little wildfire out. But the good thing is when it burns out, something good will grow
Amen.
out of that. But the other thing, too, is just so that this is the first time we ever get all the youth parents, we can talk to them. So I got to say this real quick. But I've noticed over the last few years, we always are having to ask our kids when they want, or y'all's kids, when they want to go to college away, I always have to ask them, why do you want to go away? What's your heart? Is it to get away from mom and dad? Or is it because you really feel that's where God wants you? And I would just be mindful of that, because sometimes it is they want to get away.
They want to get away.
So just be mindful of that. And I always, now every senior comes to me and say they want to go somewhere else. Why? Because I'm always mindful, because I'm thinking of these seniors who have done this, and some of them, yeah, they want to get away, or they really feel God but wants them to go that way. But I always tell them to judge that and then be ready for God to change, because they may not. Don't go to college to get away for that. So we do talk to them about that, but we also tell them to talk to you guys. That's the first question we always ask our kids, y'all's kids. Sorry. We have
And
a lot
most of the
kids.
time they say, I can't.
I can't. I don't want to. Well, you have to. And we're getting to the point now where we are like, go talk to them, then you can come talk to us. Just because we're trying to get them to you so you'll like us. No. No, but they've got to start doing that. And we've always told them we'll be there with them. If they want us to go with them, we've done this before. If they want us to talk with their parents, we will be there and help them with it. If they make a mess, we'll fix it, because I sent them there. So, do you have something, Dr. Cephas?
Yes, real quick.
I just wanted to add, it's okay to apologize
Yes.
to your parent. I mean, to your kids.
To your kids.
To your kids. And to your parents, of course, kids. But I know that one reason I continue to follow God even when I was on my own is because even when my parents messed up, they always came back and they apologized. They explained how they did things wrong. Listen, I know this is not how I should have done things.
Amen.
I handled it, wrong. Please forgive me.
Amen.
They always repented to
Yeah.
us. We didn't have to go ask or beg or, they always came to us to repent to us. And that meant the world to us. And that helped us with our walk with God as well, to see that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not be perfect, but we're supposed to be teaching our kids like how to make mistakes
walk with God.
and how to, and walk with God through it.
Yeah.
Not that things completely are over when you mess up. So it's important for your kids. I hope some of us go home tonight and maybe apologize
Yes.
for some things that
Yes.
were brought to the surface. I think that's important that our kids see that even as adults, we're not going to flip out because someone else knows we messed up. Because
Yeah.
we all are
We all
messing
mess
up
up.
every day. And we're sitting up here saying, let your kids know it's okay to mess up. But sometimes us as parents, we're the ones.
We need to let them know that we mess up too.
Yes. So I just wanted to encourage. It's okay. It's good to apologize. It helped shape my life, helped shape my walk with God, because my parents were willing to apologize when they knew they'd messed up.
Amen. Dr. Cephas, and we need to wrap up here. No, there's nothing else. They were just passing it to you. Did Dr. Crystal, did you have something? Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't see that. I'm sorry, madam.
No problem. I'll go quickly. I just wanted to say that on the end of when I see students in college, what Miss Melissa said is so important. It's everything we've said, because you want to be able to be proud of the person you helped produce.
Yeah.
You want to be able to send them off knowing they're going to walk with God for themselves. And I see a lot of students who lack confidence, and they have a poor relationship with authority. So I'll have a student who maybe is doing well in the semester, decent student, making a B or even an A, and whatever issue might happen, and they fall off the wagon. I had a student who came back, had missed a second exam, and I had to send the email and say, you want to take your test? Like, what happened? What's up with you? And then the student was like, I had this actual real emergency, legit something, but I just figured I missed the test and it was my fault. And wouldn't even stand up to say, hey, I have this problem. This is happening. Can I get an extension? Like, you would not believe the students who don't even respond to my emails that say, are you all right? You okay? You got something going on? And I see them later, they just fall off because they don't have the fortitude to say, this is what's going on with me. Can I get an extension? Or I need this help, or this is an issue, just to let you know. You really wouldn't believe that. And it's often because they are insecure and they're not sure about themselves. And so if we can instill in our children who they are in God first, they can then have the confidence to be able to ask the questions they need to ask, follow through in the ways they need to follow through, and then be able to be positioned to give out what God's put in them to be able to share. But so many of them discount themselves without even being discounted because they are not okay with who they are. Well, you said
they're insecure with authority. That tells me that's a home issue.
Yes, sir.
Because they're not confident standing in front of dad, knowing how to plead their case, knowing how to get forgiveness, probably physically or verbally abused, and just timid.
I mean, can you come and do you want to come and take your exam that you just didn't show up for? And then birds, then nothing. And like they're just going to fail the class when I have extended. And it's amazing to me and sad. And then, can I tell the blind student story?
Sure.
The other thing that we want to be sure we avoid is making students who are so scared that they can't see other people. And if we as a church body can contribute to loving on youth and college and career students when we, even if we don't have children ourselves, right, because we're a part of a body, and that's advancing the kingdom. If we can see somebody sad and encourage them, we can help avoid what happened in one semester in my class. My office is downstairs from where my classroom is, and there's a big staircase. I was a couple of minutes late going to class, and my student who is visually impaired, visibly blind, like other people can see he has sunglasses and a cane. He's coming down the stairs, and I greet him, and I say, "Hey, how you doing?" He was like, "Oh, I didn't realize we had class." I was like, "You didn't realize we had class?" He said, "Yeah, because I went up there and the door was locked." The door was locked because I had not yet unlocked it, but the entire class was standing around the door. They all were there when he went up and tried to open the door. They saw him there and didn't say, "The door's not locked because the professor's not here." My blind student had to find out from me. I was so livid. Do you understand what I'm telling you? That they saw him, and there was an adult in my class, as in like a 30-something-year-old man. And he also was on his phone. Y'all can see the brother tapping the stick. Can you imagine? And so I go into the class angry, and I have to try not to embarrass him. And I have to say, okay, we're a team here. If we notice one other person is having a difficult time, we're going to work together. And I tried to, abate it. And then we had a visual activity in class where I asked them to describe what they see as if they were on the phone with the person who couldn't see the pictures. He's taking great notes, and I just carry on. But can you imagine that's literally what happened on this campus? Because people are so self-absorbed that they wouldn't say, "Hey, yo, man, no, she's just not here yet." The entire, 30-something kids
just ignored the blind guy.
Just ignored him. A great student. He's engaging. A lot of them could do better in class because of his activity, right? Not like they didn't know him or know he was. That's because we don't talk to our kids, right? That they can be that self-absorbed. So I wanted you to be able to hear that example, to know the pain that people are in and so internally absorbed that they couldn't see that. That's where we are. And so it really, really does matter that we help our children to see who they are in Christ and love on them, so they won't be the ones in that mix. And over half of that class would tell me they're Christians.
Yeah.
And some of them literally I had conversations with and profess themselves as Christians, and that's not Christ-like.
All right, Dr. Cephas, last statement.
Pastor, isn't there Levitical laws about...
There is. Don't put a stumbling block in front of the blind. Leviticus chapter 19. We have to have laws because we have stupid people.
So this is probably one of the hardest things about parenting. There's active things that you're teaching, and there's inactive things that you're teaching, right? So we'll just take Melissa's example of not repenting or saying you're sorry to your kid, right? You're inactively teaching them pride. That's what they're going to absorb, that when you mess up, you don't apologize, you don't repent, even though you're not actively teaching them pride. What you're actively showing them in the Bible is, yep, we repent, we forgive, we do all these things, but by your actions, that's what they're going to absorb. And I think Pastor would tell you, as an elder or just a teacher, the biggest things that stand out in all of us, myself included, Pastor included, Ms. Mander included, are those things we absorb from our parents that they didn't actively teach us. Every single one of our problems are not something that we were necessarily taught. is we will say it's the way I grew up. Well, that
yeah.
means that I was inactively taught it.
Yeah, that's good.
And I
Steve.
think it's so important that we are watching what we are saying versus what we're doing, how we're living. You may never say something like, you need to be prideful, but if you never repent to your kid, everybody knows we mess up. We know there aren't any perfect parents, so they're going to leave your house just learning pride.
Yeah.
And there would be more schooled in pride than there would be pastors preaching or Sunday school about, not being prideful, because that's how, and that's such a critical thing. I don't know how to fix that because that's hard to do because we are who we are, right? But, so parenting is also us walking with God and showing them that, hey, this is just how it is. Daddy has a hard time repenting. You just say, I know I should say I'm sorry more. Those type of things are necessary so that we don't accidentally or inactively teach something bad. Then we may have a kid that grows up that's prideful and wonder how, we never taught him that. Well, yes, you did.
Yeah.
Because you never repented.
So
that's just one thing. Completely different thing is, I think Luke said we have about 90% of our churches homeschool now. One of the things I said to Pastor is there's a confusion between being homeschooled and a good parent. Being a homeschool person, household, does not make you a good parent. It's those things are not synonymous. They're different things, right? I think, in fact, homeschool magnifies what kind of parents you are. So if you're a good parent, now that you're with your kid all the time, right, they're going to absorb more. We just talked about inactive teaching and active teaching. Versus if you're a bad parent, or you're not paying attention to them, or you don't repent, now that they're homeschooled, they're going to absorb more of your bad qualities.
What was it you said in my office? You said a homeschool kid with social media is worse than a public school kid.
Oh, absolutely. Because part of what, there are different sects of homeschools. I have a friend that's completely not Christian, completely hippie, and they're all about homeschooling, simply because they don't trust the public school too. So it's not just us in our, Christian bubble that think that, they have their issues with the school too. So if we're pulling them back to keep them away from all these things, and then you give them the gateway to all these things times 100.
Yeah.
Because even going to school, at least in school, I think Luke is saying that the teachers they have to put their phone up. But at home,
you don't.
You don't. So giving them the gateway, a homeschool kid with the gateway to the world, unfiltered, you might as well just sit them in the street and let everybody just teach them what they want to teach them. I mean, literally, that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
Times 100, because they can just do it here. So I think that keeping in mind that the things we do them because we're a good parent and we think this is going to facilitate and help. It's not what makes us a good parent. Whether I'm, praying over the food, we're teaching them honoring God. We're thankful for those things. Those are the things we're teaching. It's not necessarily, those things don't make us good parents.
Yeah.
And homeschool is one of them.
Well, whether we homeschool or public school, if we're not doing this Malachi 4 with our parents involved in our kids' life, we're going to lose our kids. You can homeschool them and lose them. You can public school them and lose them. But if parents are involved with either set of kids, the homeschool kids or the public school kids, we have a promise that they will catch our heart and follow our God. I think one of the things we've said for years is that bringing your kids to church does not equal their salvation. And don't bring your kids to church, expect me to make a disciple out of them. That's your job because you have them way more than I do. And if you want to see why kids turn out bad, it's going to typically be because of a lack of dad's hand biblically involved in their life. That's a general rule. You may want to think you're the exception, and that may be the case, but looking at these verses, the verses say it's dad's responsibility. So we've covered a lot tonight. It's a lot to hash and absorb, so maybe you get it, listen to it. We had 12 questions. I think we only got through 4 of them, so hopefully you learned something. Why don't we stand to our feet? You've been sitting a while. Let's pray. Oh, Father, this has been a different kind of service for us tonight, but you give us so many children here, and every generation faces its battles, whether it was the latchkey homeschooling or the latchkey parenting I had as a child, or whether, Lord, it was all the running around and MTV and digital computers of the 90s, and then everything that started taking off in the 2000s, and now social media and furries and transgenderism and the alphabet mafia. Every generation has its battles, and yet your grace remains true. Your scriptures remain true. The secret to parenting is true, and we are left to be doers of your word. Father, we ask you to help us. We ask you, O Lord, to help us. We ask you, O Lord, help these parents. Have mercy on these parents. Strengthen these parents. Equip these parents, and may they glorify you. Father, I pray something's been said tonight to convict, to prick, to equip, to enlighten, to bring a resolution to these parents and these kids. May these kids feel at liberty to be able to tell Mom and Dad, Mom, I just need to hear this from you. Daddy, I just need to hear you say you love me, that you think I'm pretty. Father, may some of our dads dial it back with their criticism and their rebukes, and may they dial up their daily interest and their daily attention. May we not be too busy with careers or hobbies or social media or those blasted iPhones. May we give our children the attention they need. Have mercy on us, Lord. Have mercy on our babies, and help the younger generation of parents with little ones still at home to learn from us, to not follow our mistakes, but to follow our successes. Help us, Lord, to glorify you with these little children you've given us. May we see our kids in heaven with more rewards than us because we succeeded in their lifetime. Let's pray in tongues a moment here. Seleboko stelebaka stelebako. Seleboko stosolabaka sidelepa. Sorobaka stelebaka sedarabasto. Soroboko storobaka sakadarusto. Soroba costa leba casta leba costo. Soroba casa darrebasa codorosto. Soroba cadista leba cadusto. Voreba baravo costo reba balavo custo. Foreba custo coso reba balavo custo leba balavo leba balavo custo leba cadaste. Jesus eleba custo. Jesus eleba gaste. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, help us. Father, we thank you for a resetting of our parenting clock. Father, I know your word corrects us and your word instructs us, and sometimes we just need to be shaken and brought back into alignment in our parenting. Father, may we realize how sensitive, how precious, how gentle, how innocent, how programmable, how vital our children are. May we not fail you with their lives. Forgive us, Lord, our shortcomings. Forgive us our angry outbursts. Forgive us our neglect. Forgive us our tempers. Forgive us our laziness. Forgive us our selfishness. Forgive us, Lord, for giving the boss man more of our life than our own children. The bosses who just seem to rotate in and out on a schedule, and our children who just desperately want to please us. Forgive us, Lord, for nitpicking our children to death. Forgive us, Lord, for stripping away their confidence and causing them to hate us. Father, give us their hearts. Turn our hearts back towards them and turn their hearts back towards us, lest you smite our land or our church with a curse. We thank you, Lord, for helping us. Let's pray something here. Even if you don't have kids, just pray it with us anyway. Pray this after me. Father, thank you for our children. Thank you for grace to parent. Thank you for wisdom to parent. Thank you for the attention span to parent. Forgive me, Lord, for failing. Forgive me, Lord, for attitude. Forgive me, Lord, for hurting my kids. I repent. Restore my relationship. Help me redeem the time. Help me turn my heart with full attention back towards my kids. And may their heart return to me with love, respect, and adoration. Thank you for my children. May they always serve you. In Jesus' name, amen. I would encourage every parent to go